Justice is blind, but sometimes it bites its own. For 23 years, Michael Thompson stood on the right side of the courtroom, the side with the polished shoes and the confident stride, the side that spoke with authority, that wielded power, that decided who walked free and who disappeared behind bars. He was good at his job, some would say exceptional, a conviction rate that made his colleagues envious, a reputation that made defense attorneys nervous. He believed in the system, believed in order, believed that justice, though sometimes harsh, was always fair. Until the morning he woke up in cell 47. Concrete walls, steel door, the smell of industrial cleaner mixed with something darker, older, a toilet without a seat, a thin mattress on a metal frame, and the sound, that constant echoing hum of voices and footsteps and doors slamming that never, ever stops. This isn't a story about revenge. It's not about corruption or conspiracy or some dramatic fall from grace. It's about something more unsettling. What happens when the person holding the scales suddenly finds himself being weighed? When the hunter becomes the hunted? When the judge becomes the judge? How does a man survive when everything he believed about justice, about fairness, about the system he served his entire life, turns on him? This is the story of Michael Thompson, the prosecutor who became the prisoner, and what he learned when the gavel finally fell on him. Michael Thompson woke to darkness, not the comfortable darkness of his bedroom with its memory foam mattress and blackout curtains, not the gentle hum of central air conditioning and the distant sound of his wife's breathing beside him. This was different, hard, cold, wrong. He opened his eyes. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh and unforgiving. The ceiling was concrete, gray, stained with years of water damage and things he didn't want to think about. He sat up and the mattress beneath him crinkled, plastic covering worn fabric. His head throbbed. His mouth tasted like metal and fear. Where am I? The walls were concrete blocks, painted a pale green that had faded to the color of old bruises. A steel door with a narrow window, a toilet in the corner, no privacy, no dignity, a small sink with a single faucet, and bars, steel bars on the window high up on the wall, letting in a slice of gray morning light. Number. Michael stood, legs unsteady. His clothes were wrong, scratchy cotton pants, a matching shirt with numbers stenciled on the back. DOC 847392. His shoes were canvas slip-ons that smelled of disinfectant. He stumbled to the door, pressed his face against the narrow window. A corridor stretched in both directions. Other doors, identical to his. Other cells. "No," he said aloud, voice cracking. "This can't be." But it was. He was in prison. Michael Thompson, 47 years old. Senior prosecutor for the district attorney's office. A man who had sent hundreds of people to places exactly like this. A man who had stood in courtrooms and argued for maximum sentences, for consecutive terms, for the harshest possible consequences. And now he was here. The memories came in fragments. His office. Late night, finishing paperwork on the Rodriguez case. His secretary saying goodnight. The parking garage dark and empty. His car. And then, nothing. Just darkness. And then this. A buzzer sounded, sharp and violent. The door clicked. A voice over an intercom. "Intake. Line up." Michael's hands shook as he moved to the door. It swung open automatically. In the corridor, other men were emerging from other cells. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with suspicion, a few with something that might have been recognition. They formed a line. Michael stood among them, trying to understand, trying to remember, trying to wake up from what had to be a nightmare. But he didn't wake up. An officer, a corrections officer, not a colleague, not someone he knew, walked down the line with a clipboard. "Move when I call your number. Stay silent. Follow instructions." Michael wanted to speak, to explain that there had been a mistake, that he was a prosecutor, that he didn't belong here. But the words died in his throat. Because 23 years of standing in courtrooms had taught him something. Protests of innocence meant nothing. Everyone claimed they didn't belong. Everyone insisted it was a mistake. He'd heard it all before, had dismissed it all before, and now he was one of them. The intake process was methodical, dehumanizing. They checked his identification bracelet, took his fingerprints, again, though he couldn't remember the first time, photographed him from 3 angles, issued him bedding, toiletries, a towel so thin it was translucent. Thompson, Michael, cell 47, block C. That was it. No explanation, no answers, just a cell number and a block assignment. He was no longer Michael Thompson, prosecutor. He was inmate 847392. As they led him back to his cell, he passed a common area where other inmates sat at metal tables. A few glanced up. One, an older man with gray stubble and tired eyes, stared at him for a long moment, then whispered something to the man next to him. Michael's stomach turned, because he recognized that look. It was the same look he'd seen in courtrooms, the look defendants gave when they knew their fate was sealed, when they understood that the system had them and the system didn't let go. Only now the system had him. Back in cell 47, the door clanged shut. The lock engaged with a sound that seemed to echo in his bones. Michael sat on the thin mattress and put his head in his hands. He thought about the last case he'd prosecuted. Marcus Chen, 19 years old, caught with drugs he swore weren't his. Public defender who was overworked and underpaid. A judge who was tired and wanted to clear his docket. Michael had asked for the maximum, 5 years, got it. The kid had cried, said he had a scholarship, said he was innocent, said please. Michael had packed his briefcase and moved on to the next case. How many Marcus Chens had there been? How many people sitting in cells just like this one, trying to understand how their lives had come to this moment? He'd never thought about it. Not really. They were cases, numbers, convictions that built his reputation and advanced his career. But they were also people, and now he was one of them. The first night was endless. Michael lay on the thin mattress, staring at the concrete ceiling, listening to the sounds of the prison. Voices echoing down corridors, doors slamming, someone laughing, someone crying, the constant shuffle of feet, the rattle of keys, the buzz of fluorescent lights that never fully turned off. He tried to piece together what had happened, how he'd gotten here, whether anyone knew where he was, his wife, his colleagues, his friends. Had they reported him missing? Were they looking for him? Or had something happened that he couldn't remember, something that had led to this? The questions circled endlessly, finding no answers. When morning came, if you could call the slight increase in light and noise, morning, the door clicked open. Breakfast was served in the common area. Michael moved with the crowd, got his tray, something gray and congealed, toast that tasted like cardboard, coffee that was barely warm, and looked for somewhere to sit. Every table was full, every face was watching him. He chose a table at the edge, sat alone, tried to make himself small, tried to be invisible, but invisibility was impossible here. "You're Thompson, right?" Michael looked up. The man standing over him was tall, mid-30s, with a scar running from his temple to his jaw. He looked familiar in a way that made Michael's chest tighten. Yes. Thought so." The man sat down across from him without invitation. "James Rivera, you prosecuted me 7 years ago. Drug possession. I got 18 months. Michael's mouth went dry. I don't remember." "Course you don't." Rivera's voice wasn't angry. It was matter-of-fact, almost curious. "I was just another case to you, number whatever on your docket that day. But I remember you. Remember exactly what you said. The defendant shows no remorse and poses a continued threat to society. That's what you told the judge." "I was doing my job." "Yeah, you were." Rivera ate a spoonful of whatever was on his tray. "So what are you doing here? They don't usually put prosecutors in general population. Too dangerous. So either you really screwed up or something weird is going on." "I don't know," Michael admitted. "I woke up here yesterday. I don't remember. I don't know what happened." Rivera studied him for a long moment. "You scared?" "Yes." "Good, you should be." But there was something in Rivera's eyes that wasn't cruel, something almost like understanding. He stood, picked up his tray. Watch yourself, Thompson. Some people in here remember you real well, and not fondly. The day crawled by. Michael stayed in his cell as much as possible, but they forced inmates out for certain periods: meals, recreation time, showers. Each time he entered the common areas, he felt eyes on him, whispers following him. Some looks were curious, others were hostile. A few were something worse, calculating, like predators sizing up prey. He kept his head down, said nothing, tried to become invisible again. But that night, lying in his cell, the memories started coming back. Not memories of how he'd gotten here. Those were still blank, still dark. But memories of the cases, the people, the sentences. He remembered Devin Mitchell, 22, caught breaking into a pharmacy, looking for painkillers for his mother, who was dying of cancer and couldn't afford treatment. Michael had prosecuted him for burglary and drug-related charges. 3 years. He remembered Alicia Santos, 17, driving her boyfriend's car, didn't know he'd stashed stolen goods in the trunk. Michael had charged her as an accomplice. 2 years. He remembered Richard Young, 45, veteran with PTSD. Got into a fight outside a bar when someone triggered his trauma. Michael had gone for assault with intent. 5 years. One after another, the cases came back. The faces, the pleas, the families crying in the gallery, the public defenders arguing for leniency, and Michael standing tall in his suit, arguing for the maximum, for consecutive sentences, for no mercy. Because that was justice. Because that was his job. Because the law was clear and consequences were necessary and society needed to be protected. But now, lying in a cell, just like the ones he'd sent those people to, he understood something he'd never understood before. The law might be clear, but life wasn't. The next morning during recreation time, Michael found himself standing in the yard. Concrete walls topped with razor wire, guards in towers, men clustered in groups, playing cards, lifting makeshift weights, just standing and staring at nothing. An older inmate approached him, 60, maybe older. Gray hair pulled back in a ponytail, eyes that had seen too much. "You're the prosecutor," the man said. "Not a question." Michael nodded. "Name's Thomas. Been in here 11 years. Got 15 more. He lit a cigarette, offered one to Michael. Michael shook his head. "You know what the worst part is?" "What?" "It's not the cell, not the food, not even the violence, though that's bad enough. It's the time, the way it just disappears. You wake up one day and realize 5 years have passed, and you can't remember a single meaningful thing that happened. You're just erased, bit by bit." Michael said nothing. "I bet you never thought about that," Thomas continued. "When you were standing up in court, asking for 10 years, 20 years, life. Did you ever think about what that actually means? What it does to a person?" I thought about justice." "Justice?" Thomas laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Man, justice is what you call it when you're on the winning side. When you're on the losing side, it's just called time." He walked away, leaving Michael standing alone in the yard, surrounded by men whose lives had been reduced to numbers and sentences and endless, empty time. That night, Michael started writing. They'd given him a small notebook during intake, something about therapeutic documentation. He'd ignored it until now, but now he needed to process, to understand, to remember. He wrote about the cases, the people he'd prosecuted, the arguments he'd made, the sentences he'd secured, and he wrote about what he was learning. That the system he'd believed in so completely wasn't blind, it was selective. That justice wasn't about fairness, it was about power. That every sentence he'd fought for had destroyed not just one life, but families, communities, futures. He thought about Marcus Chen, the 19-year-old with the scholarship. Where was he now? What had 5 years in a place like this done to him? He thought about Devin Mitchell, stealing medicine for his dying mother. Had anyone checked on the mother? Had she died while her son was locked away? He thought about Alicia Santos, 17 years old, punished for her boyfriend's crimes. What kind of person had she become after 2 years in the system? The questions multiplied, the guilt accumulated. The understanding deepened. Michael Thompson had spent 23 years serving justice, but he'd never understood it until now. Weeks passed. Michael stopped counting days. Time lost meaning, just like Thomas had warned. One day bled into the next, each one identical. Wake, breakfast, recreation, lunch, more recreation, dinner, lockdown, sleep, repeat. But something was changing inside him, a shift so gradual he almost didn't notice. He started observing, really observing. He watched the young men, barely more than kids, who walked around trying to look tough, but whose eyes showed nothing but fear. He saw the older men who'd given up, who moved through their routines like ghosts, already dead in every way that mattered. He noticed the mental illness, the untreated trauma, the addiction, the desperation, and he realized this wasn't a place of rehabilitation, it was a warehouse, a place to store people society didn't want to deal with. He'd help fill this warehouse, case by case, sentence by sentence. Rivera approached him one afternoon in the library, a small room with outdated books and broken chairs where inmates could spend an hour if they behaved. "You're different than most prosecutors," Rivera said, sitting down across from Michael. "What do you mean?" "Most of them, if they ended up in here, they'd be screaming about their rights, demanding lawyers, threatening lawsuits. You're just sitting here, reading, watching, learning." Michael closed the book he'd been pretending to read. "What choice do I have?" "That's not it," Rivera leaned forward. "You're actually paying attention, seeing us as people, not cases. That's rare." "I'm sorry," Michael said quietly, "for your case, for what I said. You weren't a threat to society. You were a kid who made a mistake." Rivera was silent for a moment. "I was, and I paid for it. Lost my job, lost my girlfriend, lost 2 years of my life. But you know what? I survived, got out, built something new." He paused. "So why are you here, Thompson? What did you do to end up on this side?" "I don't know. I genuinely don't remember." "That's what everyone says." I know it sounds like..." "I believe you," Rivera interrupted. "Because here's the thing. If you'd actually done something, you'd be fighting it. You'd be acting like those other prosecutors would. But you're not. You're accepting it. Almost like you think you deserve it." Michael stared at him, because Rivera was right. Deep down, in a place he didn't want to examine too closely, Michael did think he deserved this. Not because of any specific crime, but because of all of them. All the cases where he'd pushed for the maximum, all the times he'd dismissed pleas for mercy, all the lives he'd helped destroy in the name of justice. Maybe this was karma. Maybe this was the universe's way of teaching him what he should have learned years ago. "You're right," Michael said. "I do think I deserve this." "That's messed up, man, but also kind of brave. Most people can't admit when they're wrong, especially people with power." That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He lay on his bunk staring at the ceiling, thinking about a case from 10 years ago. Andrew Malik, 26, single father, caught with marijuana, not selling, just possession. It was his third offense, which meant mandatory minimum sentencing. The public defender had begged for leniency. The man had a 4-year-old daughter. No other family. If he went to prison, the daughter would go into foster care. Michael had argued that the law was clear. 3 strikes, mandatory minimum, 3 years. He got the sentence, felt good about it. Another win for his record. He'd never thought about the 4-year-old daughter, never wondered what happened to her, never considered that enforcing the law might have destroyed an innocent child's life. He thought about her now. She'd be 14, a teenager. Had she spent 10 years in foster care? Had she been adopted? Was she okay? The guilt was crushing. Michael pulled out his notebook and began to write. Not about his cases this time, about what he was learning, about what needed to change. He wrote about mandatory minimums and how they removed judicial discretion, about the war on drugs and how it had criminalized poverty and addiction, about cash bail and how it created a 2-tier justice system, one for people who could afford to pay, another for those who couldn't. He wrote about the prosecutors he'd worked with, how they measured success by conviction rates instead of by actual justice, how the system incentivized them to be harsh, to never show mercy, to rack up wins at any cost. He wrote about the defense attorneys who were overworked and underpaid, who had to handle impossible caseloads, who couldn't give their clients the representation they deserved. He wrote about the judges who were elected and therefore political, who had to appear tough on crime to keep their seats, who couldn't afford to be seen as soft. The whole system was broken. He'd just never seen it before because he'd been on the winning side. Days later, during recreation time, a fight broke out. Two inmates, young guys, going at each other over something trivial, a stolen cigarette, a disrespectful comment. Michael couldn't tell. The guards responded with overwhelming force, batons, pepper spray. Both men ended up face down on the concrete, hands zip-tied behind their backs, bleeding and choking. Michael watched the whole thing, watched how quickly violence escalated, watched how the punishment was always disproportionate, watched how the system was designed to break people, not help them. That night, Thomas found him in the day room, staring at a TV that was showing some mindless sitcom no one was actually watching. "You're changing," Thomas observed. "Am I?" "Yeah, you got that look. The one people get when they finally understand." "Understand what?" "That this place isn't about rehabilitation. It's about punishment. Pure and simple. Society wants us to suffer, and they built a system to make sure we do." Michael nodded slowly. "I helped build that system." "I know. We all know." Thomas sat down next to him. "So what are you going to do about it?" "What can I do? I'm in here." "For now, but eventually you'll get out. Most people do. And when you do, you'll have a choice. Go back to who you were or become someone better." "Who do you think I'll become?" Thomas smiled. "That's up to you, Mr. Prosecutor. But I'll tell you this. You got a chance most people never get. You got to see both sides. Don't waste it." 3 months into his sentence, though Michael still didn't know why he was here or how long he'd be here, something unexpected happened. He was called to the warden's office. The walk through the corridors felt surreal. Guards on either side of him, other inmates watching, wondering. The institutional green walls and fluorescent lights that had become so familiar. The warden's office was different. Carpet, windows, furniture that wasn't bolted down. It smelled like coffee and leather, like the world Michael used to inhabit. The warden sat behind a large desk, reading a file. He was in his 50s, gray-haired, with the weathered look of someone who'd spent too many years managing chaos. "Sit down, Thompson." Michael sat. The warden closed the file, studied him. "Do you know why you're here?" "No, sir. I've been trying to figure that out since I arrived." "You really don't remember?" "I remember my office, late night, parking garage, then nothing. I woke up in cell 47. The warden leaned back in his chair. "That's because you were drugged. Sedative in your coffee. Strong enough to knock you out for hours and scramble your short-term memory." Michael's heart raced. "Drugged? By who? Why?" "That's, complicated." The warden opened a drawer, pulled out an envelope. "This is from Judge Patricia Morrison. She asked me to give it to you after 3 months. Said you'd need that long to understand." Judge Morrison. Michael knew her, had worked with her on dozens of cases. She was fair, thoughtful, one of the few judges who actually seemed to care about justice rather than politics. Michael opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter, handwritten. "Michael, if you're reading this, you've spent 3 months experiencing what you've inflicted on others for 23 years. I apologize for the deception, but it was necessary. 6 months ago, Marcus Chen killed himself in prison. He was 2 years into the 5-year sentence you fought so hard for. He left a note saying he couldn't survive. That prison had broken him, that he'd lost everything, his scholarship, his future, his hope. His death hit me hard, made me think about all the sentences I'd approved, all the lives I'd helped destroy in the name of justice. I realized I'd stopped seeing defendants as people and started seeing them as problems to be solved. Then I thought about you, the prosecutor with the highest conviction rate in the state, the man who never asked for mercy, never considered alternatives, never saw defendants as human beings with complicated stories. I couldn't change the system alone, but I could change one person. I could give you what no prosecutor ever gets: perspective. So I arranged this, with help from people who share my concerns about our justice system. We drugged you, processed you through intake, and placed you in general population. Everything you've experienced is real. The cell, the inmates, the routine, the fear, the helplessness, everything except your sentence. You're not actually convicted of anything. You're not actually serving time. You're a participant in an experiment, a lesson in empathy. The warden will release you today. You're free to go, free to return to your life, your career, your comfortable existence. But here's my question, Michael. Now that you've seen what you've been doing, now that you've felt what they feel, now that you understand what your justice actually means, what will you do? Will you go back to who you were, or will you become someone better? The choice is yours. Judge Patricia Morrison. Michael read the letter 3 times. His hands were shaking. His mind was reeling. It was an experiment, a lesson. Everything, the cell, the intake, the inmates, the fear, all of it had been designed to teach him something. And it had worked. "I'm free to go?" he asked the warden. "Yes. Your clothes are being prepared. Your car is still in the parking garage where you left it. Your wife thinks you've been on a special assignment. Everything has been handled." Just like that? Just like that, the warden stood. For what it's worth, I was against this plan initially. Thought it was too extreme, too risky. But Judge Morrison convinced me. She said that people in power need to understand the consequences of their power. And she was right. Michael stood on shaking legs. The inmates, Rivera, Thomas, the others, did they know? Some did, some didn't. The ones who knew were volunteers, people Judge Morrison personally selected because she trusted them, people who wanted to help teach this lesson. And Marcus Chen, did he really? Yes, that part was real. He really did kill himself. That's what started all of this. Michael felt sick. A 19-year-old kid dead because of a sentence he'd fought for, because he'd seen a case instead of a person. The warden handed him a card. Judge Morrison's personal number. She wants to hear from you, wants to know what you decide. Michael stood in the prison parking lot, wearing his own clothes, holding his car keys. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. He could see the razor wire on top of the walls, could hear the sounds of the prison, muffled but present. He could leave, drive away, go home to his wife, his comfortable house, his comfortable life. Return to his office, his cases, his career. But he couldn't, not yet. He pulled out his phone, they'd given it back at discharge, and dialed the number on the card. Judge Morrison answered on the first ring. Michael, you could have just talked to me. Would you have listened? He thought about that, about who he'd been 3 months ago, confident, certain, convinced of his own righteousness. No, he admitted, I wouldn't have. I know, that's why I did what I did. Sometimes people need to experience something to understand it. Sometimes empathy requires immersion. It was cruel. So is what you've been doing for 23 years. Michael had no answer to that. What are you going to do now? Judge Morrison asked. I don't know, I can't go back to who I was, but I don't know how to move forward. Then figure it out. You have a rare gift now, Michael. You understand both sides. You know what justice looks like from the bench and from the cell. Don't waste it. She hung up. Michael stood in the parking lot for a long time, watching the sun disappear below the horizon, thinking about Marcus Chen, about Rivera, about Thomas, about all the people he'd sent to places like this without ever understanding what he was doing to them. He thought about the letter he'd written in his cell, the observations, the realizations, the truth he'd finally seen. And he made a decision, not a dramatic one, not a life-changing announcement, just a quiet commitment to himself. He would go back to work, but he would do it differently. He would see defendants as people. He would fight for proportional sentences. He would advocate for alternatives to incarceration. He would use his power not to punish, but to seek actual justice. He would become the prosecutor he should have been all along. Would it be enough? Would it make up for 23 years of harm? Would it bring Marcus Chen back? Number. But it was a start. Michael got in his car and started driving. Not home. Not yet. There was somewhere he needed to go first. He drove to the cemetery where Marcus Chen was buried, found the grave, stood in front of the simple headstone. "I'm sorry," he said to the silent stone. "I'm sorry I didn't see you. I'm sorry I didn't hear you. I'm sorry I cared more about winning than about what was right." The words felt inadequate, but they were all he had. "I can't bring you back, but I can try to make sure no one else ends up here because I failed to see them as human. That's what I'm going to do. I promise." He stood there until full darkness fell, until the cemetery lights flickered on, until the cold seeped through his jacket. Then he drove home. Michael Thompson returned to his job as a prosecutor, but everything was different. He was different. He started advocating for reform, pushing for restorative justice programs, fighting against mandatory minimums, recommending treatment instead of incarceration for first-time drug offenders, considering the human cost of every sentence he requested. Some colleagues called him soft. Others said he'd lost his edge. A few understood. A few had their own moments of clarity and joined him. Judge Morrison watched from her bench, satisfied that her extreme experiment had worked. That one person at least had learned to see justice with both eyes open. And late at night, when Michael couldn't sleep, he'd think about Cell 47, about the concrete walls and the steel door, about Rivera and Thomas and all the others who taught him what he should have known all along. That justice isn't about punishment, it's about understanding, about seeing the full picture, about recognizing that every person in that courtroom, defendant, victim, judge, prosecutor, is human, complicated, deserving of dignity. He'd learned the lesson, the hard way, the only way that mattered. So here's the question. If the people who hold power in our justice system, the prosecutors, the judges, the lawmakers, had to experience what they inflict on others, would the system look different? If everyone who said lock them up had to spend just one night in a cell, would they still demand the maximum sentence? If empathy wasn't optional but required, what kind of justice would we create? Think about it. Thank you for listening to Michael's story. If it made you think differently about justice, about power, about the people behind the prison walls, then it served its purpose. What's your take? Should people in power be required to experience what they inflict on others? Or was Judge Morrison's experiment too extreme? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. If you want more stories that challenge how you see the world, subscribe to True Stories That Change Lives. Real people, real consequences, real transformation. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, remember, justice should open our eyes, not close them.